recognize the gentlelady from Michigan. I have to say an early co-sponsor of Whole Milk for Healthy Kids, Congresswoman Slotkin, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're almost done. You're getting down to the dregs of us here, so almost out. Mr. Secretary, you've answered it in a couple different ways, but just to put a sharper point on it, my questions have to do with this concept of foreign ownership of American land, farmland. Last time you were here in March, I asked you about this. You pushed back that, in a state like Michigan, majority of foreign land is owned by the Canadians by far, the Dutch, folks who are our friends. But since then, the GAO and others have come out. I think you've heard a bipartisan concern about adversarial states, a very small handful of states who we could have a potential problem with down the road. Myself and Representative Feenstra from this committee put together something that we tried to make real, which is that when a foreign entity from an adversarial country tries to buy farmland, they would just go through a national security review. This is exactly what happens if farmland right now wants to be sold to a foreign country of any kind next to a military base. I'm from the Department of Defense. So we have a process, but it's just very limited. How do you think about a process where we wouldn't be clamping down and saying no unilaterally, but there would be a national security review of the sale of to foreigners of farmland?
Yeah, I've suggested that USDA ought to be part of the CFIUS process, which is an extension of your question. I think that would be fine.
Okay, and a part of that bill is giving you a seat at the table on CFIUS, which is our longstanding process. I think it would be great if there was a bill that you liked, and then we could push forward, since I do think it's a bipartisan issue. The second question, from Michigan, our tagline now is we are the most diverse agricultural state in the country with regular access to water, right? That's our dig at California. Because of that, that we have cherry farmers, stone fruit farmers, asparagus, mint. We have a ton of smaller farmers, not monocropping. And the number one issue they raise with me when I sit with them is the cost, reliability, and availability of labor, right? Our kids don't go and work on farms anymore in the summer in the same ways. So getting that H-2A program is vital for our farmers. And they keep talking to me about the mandatory increases in the wages for those coming to work on their farms. Not that they don't want people to make decent wages, but how are we asking them to increase year over year when their profits aren't going up, right? Just kind of basic bake sale math. We've talked with the Secretary of Labor about this, but can you confirm, do you have any tools in your toolkit as the Secretary of Agriculture that would be able to provide waivers, for instance, for our smallest farms, for little guys who just can't afford these increases?
We don't have that, but what we did do is create this farm labor stabilization pilot with $63 million from the American Rescue Plan and put it out there for producers of all kinds and all sizes in all states. We got over 300 applications for assistance, and we're in the process of trying to figure out among those 300 operations who is going to get resources. And what struck me in connection with this was that most of the people applying wanted to have a higher threshold in terms of wage levels, in terms of health care, in terms of housing for their employees. We expected them to go in sort of the base level where the cost would be significantly less, but we had more applications at the higher level, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, but that program is closed, right? There's not a relief program for current small farmers.
We don't have anything available as you suggested.
It's just hard as someone who is in the executive branch and a national security person to understand that there's literally no special authority to make very, very rare decisions for the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Labor, all these folks. You can understand how farmers feel like it's a bureaucratic answer that, well, we can't do anything, we can't do anything. Are you sure there is not a special authority that you have for waivers or to do something more on this issue? Have you looked at every legal possibility?
I have.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why it's frustrating to have these questions asked.
Yeah.
Because you all had the ability to get this solved. And farmers had the ability to get this solved by supporting the Farm Worker Modernization Act, which would have capped the level but it didn't get through. Why didn't it get through? Politics.
Yeah, and I'm a co-sponsor of that bill. Okay, well, thank you for your attention to the issue, and thanks for being here. I yield back.
The gentlelady, and for the record, it did pass out of the House.
I know it did, with a bipartisan vote, and it had a majority of members in the
And it
Senate.
got hung up in the Senate.
Frustrating.
Unfortunately, some of the more difficult points, or just a few, were not addressed in the Senate. Now, please.